Just see what sort of scraps you have, and you can use the scraps. The height and width of the rims on a partial depend entirely on the height and width of the existing teeth. So just pop it into that spot. It's up on the screen now. And that one I want to use that piece there. So I've actually taken these pieces of wax from the box. I did say that before, didn't I? That you discarded last week. So there really is a lot of wastage going on, which is absolutely unnecessary. The rim must absolutely abut the teeth. I don't want any spaces between the rims and the teeth, the dentition. And I've got quite a bit of excess wax there on those rims, so I'm just going to, instead of putting a little patch in there, I'm going to use the actual rim. There's little bits of black. They look like bits of brush. Oh no, that's a bit of wire. Okay, that's all right. There's all these little bits of black area around the place. I don't like them. I don't want them to get into my work.
Is that with a really hot knife?
It's a really hot knife, yeah. I spend a lot of time waiting for the wax knife to heat up. Not quite sure. It's a bit of a toss-up between the time I wait for computers to boot up or a wax knife to heat up in this place.
Yeah, they can be even in the library.
Library computer is like 8 minutes plus.
I come in the morning, switch my computer on, go and make a cup of tea, come back.
And it's not done yet.
Sometimes it is.
Still loading.
Still loading, yeah.
No, the one in my office is really quite good. I have no complaints about that. I'll put a little bit of extra wax in there. See, there's another bit. See, it looks like somebody's trimmed a brush or something. You don't want little black spots.
Or maybe they are the molds.
No. It's just somebody was actually trimming a brush. Now, one student I saw a couple of weeks ago, not in this group, he had little black spots all through his work. I said, how'd you get those? He said, it's the carbon from here, because he's so lazy, he said, his words, not mine, that he rests his wax knife there to heat up.
Yes.
And all of these little bits of black go into his work. So we had a chat about his work ethic. And whenever you're trying to heat up a wax knife, you can see the flame is bright blue, but in the centre there's an extra blue area, and the hottest part of the flame is at the top of that blue. So please don't rest your wax knife on the carbon. Cover up the wire. and make sure there are no voids anywhere.
So you want all the wire submerged in the wax?
Yeah, yeah. It's even if it's only just underneath, it needs to be embedded. And depending on how well you bend it, is how well it's going to be embedded. Okay, so we'll come back to this one for the moment, and you'll be able to see, because this is now cooled down, I can take it off the model. You'll be able to see that on the fitting surface, it's quite dull. Okay, it's not shiny. See up here in the sulcus, it's shiny. It means it doesn't fit. Down here and the rest of it, it fits beautifully. Now, this is a technique that I'm going to teach you. It's a very, very handy thing to know. I do not cut any wax on a full registration room. So again, really, really hot. I'm going to melt the wax to shape the peripheries of the wax. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm going to hold my wax knife and the rim and the base in such an angle that the wax, if some of you want to come around on this side, it's really difficult to see from that side. See, all of that wax is melting down onto the paper. It's a nice shape of a periphery. I'll see if I can do it this way, okay? Don't know if I can do it backwards. Jess, is my head in the way? Sorry. See what I'm doing? I'm just taking the... Watch out for your head. I'm just shaping that wax or taking it away from the periphery, going down onto the paper. It's certainly not going down round onto the fitting surface, but it's shaping, and that's how you also get a nice rounded periphery. If you need to shape the posterior border, just in one long sweep. Okay? Now, we need the height, okay? And we said it was going to be 22 millimetres from the deepest part of the sulcus to the top of the rim. So this isn't absolutely exact, but what I do is I hold the ruler there and I mark 22 millimetres. Deepest part of the sulcus, not from the frenum, but the deepest part of the sulcus, which is around about there, and 22 millimetres. Okay? So that's about that line there. Excuse me, please. Ta-da! You were wondering when this was going to be used.
I thought that's for cleaning out the wax. I thought it was flipping burgers.
They're good for that too. We don't have a lot of burgers in the lab.
Oh yeah, burger.
Thanks, Samira. Okay, so now I cannot do this backwards, all right, because I'll burn myself. So what I'm going to be doing is, you getting this, Jess?
Yep.
You're a marvel. You need to hang on tight to the rim, and I'm doing that with my left thumb. My fingers are absolutely nowhere near, okay? So, I've got to look at it straight on, and I'm melting down to that line. which was 22 millimetres. All that wax went onto the paper. Is that good or what? Okay, so then, while you've got it there, you can just do a bit of a tidy up. Okay, I'm just going to cut a little bit from the area of the tuberosity. I'm going to fill in a couple of little spaces. There. And there's in between the folds, I've got a bit of air. So I'm just going to really hot wax knife and just touch those little spaces there. Just tidy it up generally. Not too shabby. A little bit bulky there. So you'll be able to see that the palette is a couple of millimetres thick, an even thickness. The rims are even. There's no lumps or bumps or voids particularly. It's a nice rounded shape. You pretty much want the same shape of ridge as you want rim. There's a little bit of excess wax there that I'm just going to get rid of. And there's a little bit of excess wax here, and because it was a wet model, it's just going to come off really easily. Okay? When you have finished your rim, you're going to pardon me. You're going to use your mini flame to smooth off the surface of the wax. You're going to polish the wax by using some cotton wool and some warm, not hot, soapy water. You're going to dry it and pack it for dispatch. Now, these mini flames have quite a sharp point. Woohoo! This one was given to me by a student. He thinks it's a bit dodgy. I think he's right. Okie dokie then.
Oh, I thought just flamethrower.
Okay.
Do you want one?
No, thank you. This. I happen to have one here, which is the teacher's one. I thought I'd test that out before I threw it away. This one is much better. These ones can be, take the flame down a little bit, and you don't want this pinpoint flame, you want it softened off, okay? When you're flaming, it's not a matter of melting the wax, it's just taking the flame over the surface and smoothing it. and you'll direct your flame exactly to where you want a smooth, not necessarily an all over thing. Once you've flamed it, you'll be able to see a few little problems, and again there's a piece of black something there, don't know what, and there's a couple of little voids that I want to get rid of. Now you can use a very sharp, a very hot point to go in there. Yes, sorry, I started to say, for presentation, you'll not only polish the wax, you will clean your model and make sure there's no wax, there's no pencil marks, there's no anything but your initials.
And will it be on the model when you send it off to the...
And it'll be on the model, yes. Which is why you need several models to do these tasks. Okay, so periphery is nice and rounded. Might be a little thick, but that's not too bad. Okay, the frenum has been relieved. The palette is a nice even thickness. There are no voids, no lumps, no bumps, except for that big one there. Okay. Now with the partial, this is cooled down enough so I can take it off. You can see that the pencil line is in there somewhere. I don't want any wax covering the teeth. I want the rims and the bases abutting the teeth. Okay? So I need to trim this little. Oh, I forgot to do that bit. Never mind. I can show you the lower while I'm waiting for this to cool down again. Okay, now the lower is somewhat different. Okay, for the lower, the rims need to be exactly over the ridges, the ridge. So, again, design. I'm just going to use the model, the shape of the model, the shape of the sulcus, over the frenum areas, over the retromolar pad, down the lingual sulcus, easy peasy. Bending a wire. Again, it's really easy, this wire. Now the wire must sit behind the ridge. It cannot, because we're going to be setting the teeth on the ridge, you cannot have the wire on the ridge. It must sit behind it. It cannot sit down into the sulcus.
Because what's the purpose of the wire?
Just to strengthen it.
Just to straighten.
Yeah. Okay, so that's pretty good. Because if you just have the wax, it's just too easily bent. See, that has no wire in it, and it can. Okay. Sorry. Rightio. And again, I'm not going to use a huge piece of wax. I might use that one actually. Somebody's cut that in a strange shape, so I'm going to use it. Now, before we go any further, how are we going to get the wax over the ridge, the rim over the ridge? And this is really, really important. To find the ridge, just take the side of your pencil. Okay? And that's the crest of the ridge. Take one of these flexible rulers, and I have some here. Line up the ruler with your little line on the crest of the ridge, and draw a line onto the land of your model. If you don't have these guidelines, you're not going to know where you're going to be putting the rim. Okay, can you see that, Jess?
Yep. Clear.
Nice and warm. If your wax isn't hot enough, soft enough, when you're putting it down over the model, it's just not going to sit properly. Again, push it down, and with the lower, I like to have my thumbs, my left thumb holding it nice and close to where I'm working. You're never going to get, unless you have tiny, tiny, weeny little fingers, you're never going to get the wax right down in that sulcus right at the beginning. Okay? So that's a good base. It's sitting, it's really fitting well over the ridge. Again, the tweezers. I have had students try to hold one side of a wire and heat up the other side of the wire. Hold it in their fingers. Please don't do that, you'll only burn yourself. And put it exactly where you want it to be. Do not come to me and say it won't go where I want it to go. Okay? I don't want it down in the sulcus because you're going to be trimming it back. I don't want it on the ridge because that's where you're going to be setting the teeth. It must sit in neatly behind the ridge. I'm just going to get rid of some of this excess because it's just too much. Oops. And you can see when I'm working on a lower, I've always got my thumb holding and stabilising somewhere close because it just wants to jump off. Okay, so a little bit slower this time. Hold and bend and push. I don't want to see anybody cutting the peripheries on these models. I want you to fold it over. You can cut the partials to a certain extent, but not the edentulous models, please.
Does not make it twisty.
No, it sits, because what you're actually doing is, what you're trying to do is, you know how I said it doesn't fit down there? By doing this, you're actually pushing down and giving it a better chance to actually fit down into the sulcus. Okay? You can trim it back later if there's too much, but I want you to get the wax as far down into the sulcus as you possibly can. And the lingual as well. And see, if that model was dry, I wouldn't be able to do that. The wax would be just sticking to the model. and you'd have a horrible, horrible mess. If you do forget and you are trying to put wax onto a dry model, what I'll have you do is take it all off, take off the pieces because it'll probably come back off in pieces. You'll have to boil off your model, clean your model and start again. Okay, so it's really important to wet your model. And if you come back to it next week, you'll have to wet it again. Don't be like one student said to me, oh, but I wet my model. When did you wet your model? Last week. Okay, that's great. So now what I'm doing is I'm just trimming off a tiny bit of wax so I can see my marks on the land. And this one here, I'm just going to redo. So I've got that line, that line, that line, and those. Okay? So that's the base done. Absolutely beautiful. The rim is going to be how high? 18 would be better. 22 for the upper and 18 for the lower. Again,